Welcome back to the Chris, Wanda, and Liam show. Chris Kim coming to you live from Saudi Arabia. Liam and Wanda will be hopefully joining me, or I'll be joining them in New York. This is the post-match Spain Holland analysis. And quite frankly, if you had seen my pre-match video and the one I uploaded as video 005 after the Brazil-Croatia game, where I talked about my predictions in the World Cup, you will basically say that for this game I was completely wrong, but my analysis of both teams was completely right. For the match, I came out and said that I thought these teams may park the bus, play tentatively, and go for the draw, which is exactly what they didn't do. They played very wide open, and they went after each other with a 5-1 to Holland. Having said that, as I talked about Spain and Holland, I basically said Spain was not going to repeat. They are not the same team. And Holland, while I kind of said I thought the French are my dark horse, I did say that Holland was going to be very strong. Okay, let's see why I predicted that. Spain, defending champion, defending two-time Euro champion. They are not the same team, and it comes down to, without Carlos Puyo on the back line and without David Villa, they've lost too much of that toughness. They're a very talented team, but they just aren't the same. And in my pre-match review, I went to the defense of Spain. I don't like their defensive line. Individually, I like Sergio Ramos. I'm not a big fan of Piqué. I'm not a big fan of Jordi Alba, who I think is very weak. And I didn't know who they were going to start on the right. And they ended up starting the gentleman name, I believe his name's like Azpilicueta. Fault me on the pronunciation, he plays for Chelsea. I do like it. But individually, even if I like them all, they're like, to me, ketchup and ice cream. Individually, great. Put them together, terrible. The gaps that were forming on that defensive line, especially between Ramos and Piqué, that center part where Carlos Puyo used to anchor it, was as big as the Grand Canyon. And Robbie Van Persie and Arjen Robben just ran through them at will from like the 40th minute on. Also, I talked about the midfield. Xavi Hernandez, Xabi Alonso, Sergio Busquets. They run the 4-3-3 under this coach who name escapes me, who's been there, coached them to their first World Cup and the 2 Euros. But they aren't the midfield they used to be. They don't have the same ability to handle the ball. They don't have the same toughness. They don't have the same energy. They don't have that same domineering, keep the ball, don't give it up, set up anymore. They're done. Now, those two effects highlight the third problem, and we saw it with Iker Casillas. Now, as I said yesterday, I said he's underrated as the international goalie, but highly overrated as the Real Madrid goalie. And I basically did highlight the fact that that's contingent in the international side, is the Spain team holds the ball, has the possession, and therefore he was never really challenged. When he was challenged, he made some big saves, and Spain would not have won any of these tournaments without him. However, now that the defense is big holes in it like Swiss cheese, and they no longer can dominate the possession of the ball, those bonehead plays he makes at Real Madrid were pretty apparent today. And quite frankly, with Victor Valdez out and 5 goals, I believe, against him. It's no longer Casillas' net. It's everybody's net. So I think the captain of the Spain team, if Debusk, the manager, as I just remembered his name, doesn't make a change, either in the defensive line or in the nets, I think the Spain team is going to have trouble getting out of their group. And if they somehow happen to, not being as familiar with Chile or Australia, they're not going to get past the round of 16. Now, 4 years ago, they lost their opening game to Switzerland, 1-0, but that was a fluke. They then went on, won every one of their games going forward to qualify and then to win the World Cup. This was not a fluke. This was a butt-kicking. Now, the last part, the offense. My son, as I talked to him, and as he saw my pre-match analysis, he said, I forgot about Diego Costa. I didn't really forget about him for the main reason is Diego Costa, while a talented striker, is not a Debusk player. Debusk likes to play very precision passing. He doesn't have a run-and-gun mentality. And unfortunately for Diego Costa, their new front striker, and actually David Silva, who has played for Debusk before and plays at Manchester City and had a great year with them, those two do better in a very open run-and-gun, flowing offense, not this pass mentality that Debusk runs in that 4-3-3 setup. So Silva, Diego Costa, and on the left, Iniesta. Iniesta, again, isn't the player he was 2 years ago, let alone 4 years ago. There are just too many holes with this team to fill. I believe that while they still can get out of their group, facing Chile, who I'm not as familiar with, or Australia, I don't think they're going to be deep into this tournament. They do not have the scoring. Their defense, as we saw today, giving up 5 goals with Swiss cheese. Casillas' bad habits were right in front of us, and the midfield can no longer, under that 4-3-3 setup, can no longer handle that pressure where teams come at them with 4 midfielders. So unless you see a major change, Spain will not repeat, nor even get close to repeating. With the Netherlands, I'm familiar with several of the players, the older ones, not the younger ones, but as I had said, what I've seen with Robbie Van Persie over the last 2 years, even with the injuries, he has really come into being one of the top 3 strikers in the world. And Arjen Robben, mind you, playing with Bayern Munich with all that firepower, his talent is unbelievable. But unfortunately, Arjen hadn't met a shot he didn't like. But what I've seen is he started passing, and even that opens the defense up if he passes every once in a while. And because he does go to his right foot, you cannot overplay his left foot. Combine that with his speed and instinct for the net. You saw today both Robbie Van Persie with 2 goals and hitting the crossbar, almost having a third, and Robben having 2 goals and almost a third. They can dominate the scoring. Okay, the midfield, they did very well against Spain. Early on, Spain dominated, but it wasn't like the game 4 years ago where the Netherlands could not even get a run going, couldn't handle the ball for any length of time because Spain was always pushing play and forcing turnovers. Early on, the Netherlands or Holland were creating opportunities. And if it hadn't been for several nice saves by Casillas, it would have been probably a 7 or 8-1 game. They were creating opportunities. They were not allowing Spain to just dominate flow. And that was the difference early on. And then it just seemed like Spain ran out of gas, whether it was the physical play or they're just getting older or the defense and their style, where the Netherlands were putting on pressure and causing their turnovers. It just was a totally different game. So where does that leave Spain? Unless De Boer makes some changes, and he did during the game make changes. He replaced Xabi Alonso, whether it was because Xabi Alonso still has issues with coming back from an injury for most of the year, or whether he remembered De Jong's cleats on his chest, or whether he just didn't have a good game. He replaced him. And he also replaced Diego Costa up at the front, bringing in Torres and bringing in Pedro. The problem with that is where he still has David Villa on the bench. Pedro is another very skillful player, but he's a wuss. He's a pretty boy. He doesn't do the ugly things that Puyo used to do, going in for the tough headers, clearing out on defense, going in where you're going to get hit, crashing the net. So the boost changes that I saw, unfortunately, it's just more of the same pretty boy type offense or game they were on. For the Netherlands, they can play tough. They can hit you with some talent and some skills. Now, why am I not picking them? I still, and the jury to me is still out on their goaltender. And defensively, they gave up some opportunities to Spain that had Spain been able to bury, it might have been a different game. So their defense looked a little bit of Swiss cheese, and again, when you get down 2-0, it becomes a different game. So that's my assessment. Like I said, I totally missed the game. I admit that, but I was spot on with where these two teams are going. I think the Netherlands, depending who they come out against in the draw, I expect them to win their group. They can go deep into this tournament. Spain may not even get out of their group. It just depends on how good Chile is, or how physical a team like Australia could be against them. So getting ready for Australia and Chile as they're coming out. Should be an interesting game. I noticed that Australia has gone with some younger people, but still have their veterans in Jelinek and Cahill. So we'll see if it is the skill of Chile with Alexis Sanchez and Bravo in net, who's a fairly solid goalie, how well they do, or whether it'll be the brute force of Australia. So happy World Cup, and we will tune in later.